and gentlemen, good evening, and welcome to this very special occasion. It is indeed a great pleasure to be gathered this evening on this very, very important evening. It is a pleasure again to be seeing old friends and esteemed colleagues. We need to really congratulate ourselves that thus far we've really survived it, particularly with the COVID-19 and the lockdown, and life has really been good for us, I suppose. And it is indeed the 3rd of November 2020. We actually are 308 days for 2020, and we left with about 58 days for the year to end. It is very, very important that we really take care of ourselves, much as we survive the first phase of the COVID, that we take care that the second phase we still are surviving until we see the 2020 is gone. I know many have indicated that 2020 is not existing, and thereafter they want to take it up in their lives, or they don't want to count it. But I guess with us, we're saying, yes, it was important that what happened has happened. And yes, thank you. We are here to be talking about the mining, its contribution to the economic transformation of our country. Tonight, it's not only important for our discussion, but globally, it is so important that it is the election day for the highly contested and possibly the most divisive US election, whereby Trump is facing Leiden. So we're keeping that with a close eye to see what will be the outcome. I just want to make sure that we are in. We're gonna be welcomed over for everybody, and I'm looking over for my agenda here. Mawela. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. There's an information I am missing here about somebody who's going to be welcoming us. Mawela, can you just indicate the name of a person who's going to be welcoming us on this very important occasion?
Chair, Ms. Litabo Tema is going to be welcoming us for the day. She's a member of OBMF in good standing. She comes from the Witbank branch, which is Emadashlin. She's within the mining sector as well. She's an educator. Can she come through?
Yes, please, she can come through. Thank you so much for that. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ntate Mukodong. Thank you very much, Chair Mawela. And mining is an international business, and South Africa has to compete, against developed and developing countries to attract like both your foreign and your local investment. So therefore, South Africa mining industry is one of the country's few world-class industries, with lots of reserves that has not been touched yet. And it continues to have like capacity to generate wealth and employment opportunities on a large scale. So as the Mpumalanga BMF, we felt like it was very important for us to have, or rather to host this kind of webinar, because Mpumalanga, it holds like your major energy, reserves, and also your precious metals, and your non-ferrous and industrial minerals. And with the diversity, it has contributed, to the emergence of your significant leakages, notable to imagine to the industrial activities such as your stone and chemical plants. And therefore, the main purpose of the webinar was just to broaden the understanding of the functionality of the mining industry and it being the key lever of the economy, and also creating dialogues and having discussions on this emerging economies such as your green economy and technology. With that said, you know, how economical friendly our policies are and their implementation. And then also we're going to be looking into like your economic empowerment opportunities, especially for the youth and also for women, and the implementation of our BBE code of practice, you know, the gender and women empowerment unit, which is, I mean, the aim was just to accelerate women-owned businesses, you know, from becoming your MPRDA applicants or rather holders, you know, participation of ownership in minerals and metals, and also accessibility of funding. And lastly, the amount of the value that the mining sector has played in shaping the country, the economy of the country, rather, and the social development of human resource at a larger scale, and the development of our host communities at large within the country at large. And with that said, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Letabo. It's all system go. You have set up a very, very, very nice foundation for our discussion. As you all are aware, we do have two speakers, very prominent speakers, that will be addressing the topic of mining. And I think, Letabo, you've done very well by putting that into perspective. Without much ado, fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker is none other than Ciara Machedi Mkabela, who is currently holding a position of a group head, executive affairs in Anglo-American. Interesting enough, she is a practiced intellectual property law with top of African intellectual property firms Core and Feature. She transitioned from law to executive management into the pharma manufacturing from 2000 and 2004. She is really continued to create and business partnership as well as collaboration between government and building. And you will not disagree with me that for this topic, we don't have none other capable lady who really will address us on this matter. She is married, I think it's very important that I should say, and is blessed with 2 children. The previous roles that she played, she's been a corporate affairs for Anglo-American Platinum, and she also was the executive director of corporate affairs for SMD, and now an executive for Anglo-American. On membership, it is important to say that she has served on the table of World Culture Forum, previously served as an advisor to the Minister of Trade and Industry. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Ciara Machedi Mkabela, and we're really looking forward to tap on your wisdom, on your intelligence, and the wealth of knowledge you have in the mining sector. Over to you, madam.
Thank you so much. Good evening, colleagues. Mr. Mashilo, that introduction made me smile. So thank you so much. Dina. So I don't know about the experience of other people, but I know that as South Africans, we have had the same experience as you alluded to, Mr. Mashilo. We had 2010, where as a country, we had hope. We had hope because we had the 2010 World Cup, Soccer World Cup. There was euphoria in the air because we welcomed many nations into our shores, and we as a country were proud to be hosting the World Cup. I have recollection of people who love soccer and people who don't love soccer crisscrossing the country to go watch different matches as they happened. At that time, there was hope that reigned in our country. I recall coming from one of the trips, the work business trips somewhere, it may even have been London or somewhere. And arriving in the country 2 months before the World Cup, and you could feel it. The highway was under construction. Improvements were being done everywhere, not just the soccer stadiums. And therein, in my view, was a moment in our history that presented transformation. And the question I keep asking myself is, what happened during that time? And did we miss a moment? Did we miss an opportunity? Or did we seize the Madiba magic moment? This is the question I keep asking myself. So as Melitabo was sharing with us the outline of the discussion today, I realized how important these conversations are and why we cannot have one sitting, one evening, but we have to have more. And I'm glad that the Mpumalanga BMF has invited us as the mining sector, particularly myself and Tibello. Let's quantum leap into 2020. Others called it 2020 at the time that we were welcoming the new year. And we all know what it brought. It brought nothing but despair. It brought nothing for us but fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of wave 2 of the pandemic, and fear of what the economic future holds for our country and for ourselves as individuals. And these questions and these dynamics as they unfolded, us as Anglo-American have been part of that process. And we have asked ourselves the similar questions about, do we have an inclusive economy? Do we have social compact as a country? Do we actually have what it takes to move on to the second level presented as an opportunity by this pandemic that leveled the playing field around the world, because it didn't choose between developing and developed countries? We were hit, all of us. And so for that reason, as Anglo, we then looked into our own processes, our own internal value system in terms of inclusivity, and asked ourselves, are we set up for a transformational and a transformed South Africa? During that process, we looked at what we call our own sustainability strategy. And this is where the slides, Ms. Titumeleng, would be helpful. So I'm going to attempt to send them again to you. But we looked at our own sustainability strategy as a company, which is sitting on three pillars. And I'll mention those three pillars in a minute. We looked at our sustainability strategy. We asked ourselves, will its aim, which from Anglo's perspective, we say it's our purpose is to reimagine mining to improve people's lives. We asked ourselves, these pillars that we have within our sustainability strategy, will they be enough for us to provide an inclusive society? A society that we realized, like many, was more divided in terms of the haves and the have-nots when the pandemic hit our shores. And we were all aware we have to implement the non-medical measures to prevent the pandemic wiping out the nation. And suddenly, there were those that had water and those that had no running water. Those that had access to facial masks and those that could not. And students and kids at schools, those that had access to Wi-Fi and technologies and those that did not have. So we looked at the context that we operate in South Africa and questioned ourselves in terms of our own levers within the Sustainable Mining Plan. And briefly, I will go very briefly. Briefly, we introduced what we call a We Care program. And the We Care program looked at not only our own employees, but also the communities around us. And I mean communities including the SMMEs within our ecosystem, because we realized that if we focus internally and we do not focus on the entire ecosystem around us, the entire village or community setup was going to collapse with us as a member as well. So the We Care program looked at the physical health, and in that regard, we provided not only support in the public and private sector of PPE, of testing capabilities, but we also provided support in the form of medical personnel that could assist with the screening within the communities. We started doing this with our own, what I call the communities that are surrounding our operations. And in this regard, it can easily be in the 600,000 numbers I'm talking about, of people that I'm talking about. But as time went on, we realized that the hotspots were happening in some cases in the Eastern Cape, which is for us a labor sending areas, and we had to look up into the broader South Africa. And that's when we got involved with Solidarity Fund, that most people would know, and the work that it did together with the Business for South Africa. We also focused on the mental health, and with the work that we are doing with the mental health, we are still doing that even now, because we are picking that more and more people are taking strain. We provided facilities for our own employees that were not only what they could pull, but also are pushing for people to seek help before it was too late. We also, within that program, looked at what we call living with dignity. We saw that during particularly level 5 and level 4, when everyone was locked in some cases locked in with people that you wanted to be locked in some cases, sadly, GBV, gender-based violence, excuse me, started becoming a problem. And we have partnered with the health authorities, with the UN, and with local NGOs and our own trade union associations within the Anglo tripartite partnership. The last was what we call the community response. And with the community response, we had wide-ranging community support program, particularly on water that I alluded to, on testing and treatment, as well as on donation of medical supplies and equipment. During this process, as you can imagine, our SMMEs and local suppliers, particularly at the early lockdown levels, level 5 and level 4, it started looking bleak in terms of resilience to be able to start or restart the businesses. And we assisted with numerous programs, one being, the payment terms, one being the loan that we have facilitated with them and the banks, how we get them to be able to manage that. And therefore ensuring that there would be resilience. In the manufacturing of PPE in terms of face mask and all that, in the process of delivery of water and even some of the food parcels, we looked at the local areas to ensure that we do not have an ecosystem that collapses. So that's just a proof point around the COVID response and what I call an inclusive process of building resilience out through the pandemic and out of the pandemic. And so in summary, really, with regard to that proof point, we looked at socioeconomic contribution, we looked at the issue of jobs and social investment, and we also looked at local procurement investment, and those programs continue to run as I speak. Now I spoke about our sustainable mining plan and the levers that it sits on. Let me touch on that. And this is, I think, important for this conversation, because I would like us to, when we speak about the issue of transformation, I would like us to talk about SDGs as a risk, but also as an opportunity that presents itself, both for the mining sector, but also for the country. So when we look at our sustainable mining plan, the three levers that it sits on, the one is to ensure that there is thriving communities around us. The second is the health of the environment, so the environmental health around us. And the last one is the trusted corporate leader. This speaks to the social compact that I spoke about earlier. These are the three pillars that underpin our sustainable mining plan. And within them, we have set as a company targets of what we should be achieving by 2023 and 2030. Let me share with you some of the programs, and I'll start first with the healthy environment. And it presents an opportunity, in my view, for the BMF members to participate, but it also presents us with an opportunity as the BMF to shape the policy direction in the country. So under the health environment, we have biodiversity and biodiversity programs in there. And this range from farming opportunities and farming schemes. We have water, and our targets under water, and I'm speaking here, access to water, societal water, access also to clean water, so the water quality. And we have said that our targets would be that we have reduction of what we call potable use water at each of our sites of 20%. And we would have received a 75% recycling of our own water, so that the rest becomes water that's available to society. And this year, we have already achieved 20% on the reduction and 70% on the recycling. But there are opportunities there. On the climate change, which is a third element under the health environment, we set ourselves to reduce our emissions by 22%, and also to reduce our use of energy consumption by 7%. And some of you may have been aware of some pronouncements that were made, I think it was last year, by the minister around the hydrogen economy and a hydrogen truck, which today is running at one of our operations in Mogalakwena as a test case. The idea here is that we would then deploy these trucks that are hydrogen fueled to all the other operations. So I think there is also an opportunity there as we look into the greener economy. I said the other leg is the thriving communities, and Mr. Mashilo, I will be closing quickly so that I allow Tibello also to share. On the thriving communities, we focus on education, and in this regard, we have supported 100 schools. And when I say support, I mean proper support, almost adopting the schools. And in some cases, we have actually adopted the schools. We also focus on the health and well-being, and we run this in collaborative platforms. I know that in Mpumalanga, we don't have this collaborative platform yet, which we call the Impact Catalyst, but we have started this work 4 or 5 years ago already in Limpopo at a regional level, and we are in partnership with Exaro, the Premier of Limpopo, and that the government of Limpopo, together with other partners, including CSIR. On the livelihoods and the thriving communities, we speak of having country programs, but also inclusive procurement. And I could, in the Q&A, spend a bit of time on the inclusive procurement. The last slide and the last lever of our sustainability strategy is the trusted corporate leader. And colleagues, this is where, as a company, we have said we are putting ourselves out there that we will be transparent and accountable. And this would be at forums like this, but also at different accountability forums, such as the CEFs in the regions and others. And so I say that this is a statement we have made. This is what we believe in, and I think that there is opportunity for us collectively to develop these accountability frameworks to become even much more sophisticated. We also, on this lever, speak of the policy advocacy, and this is honestly a big area that I believe that as BMF, we should look at, because I'm also a member of the BMF, we should look at the themes that are important, and instead of focusing on the today, we should raise our eyes and focus on what is in the horizon. Hydrogen economy, in my view, is one of them, and the technologies that come with it. I believe there is an opportunity here for South African companies to actually participate. If you think we are the leading PGM, precious PGMs, you know, your palladium, your platinum and your rhodium and others, we are the leading producers in the world. It doesn't make sense to me that we are not participating in the fuel cells and hydrogen economy. The last is the ethical value chains. And we know this when we speak about other products, but we never speak about ethical value chains when we speak about mining products, except for diamonds that have had to go through that journey. And this year, we commenced our first certification process in our PGM industry. Mr. Mashilo, I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam. It really has been informative and an insightful presentation. Just a reminder for our audience and participants, we are going to be getting a slot whereby we ask questions and there will be answers from our presenters. You will agree with me that the input made by Mrs. Machedi Mkhabela was very well-rounded. It started on the hope in 2010, came up to 2020 where we are, to be saying 2020. And the issues of the GBV, the gender-based violence, you've highlighted the levels, which I hope our fellow colleagues have made some notes, and at the right time, they will make some contribution and ask for some clarity. Now, I need to commend you, Madam, for really keeping on time. You were really spot on, because your timing was perfect as allocated. Thank you so much. Without much ado, fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna be getting our second input, and that will be more from the industry perspective. You would have noticed that the input made by Mrs. Sarah Machedi Mkhabela was more on the specific company, which is Anglo-American, which she highlighted. Lot of good work that is done over there. And I can see that questions are coming up on the screen, and the panelists will be keeping them over, and I'll be in a position to pick them up. Itumeleng is also helping us to picking up those questions to make sure that we respond to them properly. Our second speaker is none other than Mr. Tibelo Lepatswana, Chabana. He also is an admitted attorney, with the earlier part of his career focusing on labor and commercial law. He boasts with 20 years of the mining industry, with experience in social development and public relations, mining policy, and advocacy. He currently is a senior executive public affairs and transformation, working for Mineral Councils of South Africa, not Chamber of Mines, please. Mineral Councils of South Africa. Moresu Ndate Tibelo, the floor is yours. Over to you. We're looking forward to also adding on the good presentation that Ms. Sarah Machedi Mkhabela has made.
Program Director, thank you very much. Thank you to BMF for inviting me here. I'm also just trying to make sure that I hope you can see my screen, the presentation.
Yes, we can see, sir.
Okay, no, fantastic. And yeah, really, it's a pleasure to be here with the BMF audience this evening. So yes, I'm going to talk about mining, driving economic transformation. I will talk a little bit about COVID, because I think it's important. COVID really had quite a dramatic impact on the mining sector. and already ailing economy in South Africa. And then also then just to maybe focus on one particular element that we think is quite important as the Minerals Council, and that is driving exploration, to increase the contribution of mining. Some of the slides are a bit busy, and I won't really deal with each and every point of the slide, but I'll take you through it. I just want to see now I just want to move on to the next slide. Let me see there. Just give me a second here. When you don't use Zoom, there we are. Okay, it's changed slides, I believe. So let me talk a little bit about COVID. And if at some stage I'm talking to a slide that's not showing, please let me know, because it's showing at the moment the COVID-19 industry response. That's the slide that you should actually be seeing.
Correct, it's showing.
Correct. Now it's showing COVID was what we refer to as a black swan event. And what do we mean by that? I mean, it was one of those pretty much unforeseen events that have had a really unprecedented socioeconomic disruption to governments and business globally. And it's one of those where, we didn't know all the answers. We were learning as we were doing, and we were kind of like, as we say, trying to find our way. So COVID had a huge impact on many economies, many sectors of the economy, including mining also in particular. Now, what were the main elements of the interventions, I think, from the mining side? And it's pretty similar, I think, to other sectors of the economy. You had a key component of our attention was on the prevention side. As you can imagine, prevention, they say the term prevention is better than cure, and it's true. If you are able to prevent people from getting COVID, it's much easier than putting your money there than on the treatment side, because the treatment side is expensive. And as you know, certainly in the earlier days of COVID, I mean, once a person got onto, say, for instance, a ventilator, or the chances of actually surviving were pretty slim. So we focused a lot on prevention, and our efforts were focusing on essentially risk assessments in the workplace, and trying to ensure that we look after our valuable and vulnerable employees. We did obviously also manage cases very well, including, we had extensive screening and testing of employees. You'll recall that it was actually a requirement for mining companies when we went back to work that we screen and then test those employees that presented symptoms. And the industry did quite a lot in terms of making quarantine facilities and the like available. What was quite clear also in how we managed COVID was that we did, as an industry, collaborate quite extensively, I must say. And I was really quite proud of what the industry put together in terms of combating COVID. Now, there's just one thing I omitted, and I should have actually started with this. I mean, I think people do know who the Minerals Council is, the old Chamber of Mines, but I want to make it clear who we are now. I mean, we are this advocacy body representing the mining sector, but our membership is very different to what many people think it is. I mean, we've got close to 80 direct members. We're talking your large multinationals from the likes of Anglo American and the Rio Tintos, but we also have members, your mid-tier and your smaller mining companies. In fact, I think a third of our membership now is literally these smaller entities, and a lot of them actually almost 100% black-owned entities in mining. So the industry has really transformed. Certainly the Minerals Council's membership has transformed. So you'll see when I talk about these issues that we're talking about, this is what we did as an industry, large, medium-sized mining companies. So quite early on, relating to COVID, I mean, we understood that the challenge that was coming, and already in February, we were already communicating with our members to prepare for COVID. Some of the member companies like Anglo Americans were even way ahead of us, and they had already started preparing for COVID. It was important that we brought the others along, putting in place our, 10-point plan of preparedness, putting in place our SOPs, standard operating practices, so that when our work, so that to guide companies on how their workers could actually be returning to work. So COVID really kept us extremely busy, I must say, and it still does keep us extremely busy. But I'm not going to go into all this detail here. Talk a little bit about what's happened. I mean, the pandemic really had quite a profound impact. I mean, we had the demand for our commodities slacking in the countries where they are normally sold, and the ability to supply these commodities was also affected by the economic and other restrictions. And then you had the whole health crisis in terms of dealing with the actual virus and that impacting lives. So that certainly did have an impact on the mining sector. And this pandemic came at a time when the mining sector was already dealing with a host of unfortunate circumstances, and I'll come to these just now: unavailability and the price of electricity, poor, costly infrastructure, challenges in that regard, exchange volatility. So all these factors, unfortunately, affected the competitiveness of the mining sector. So between 2012 and 2019, the sector shared something like 65,000 jobs. That is quite a lot. And you know that in mining, I mean, that is a huge impact, because the average miner essentially supports about 7 to 10 dependents. Now, I think we were maybe a little bit luckier than, say, the petroleum guys. I mean, the prices, the mining prices are recovering, of our commodities, but I think the petroleum side, it was a total opposite. I mean, you had this surplus of fuel that impacted their prices. So from the jobs point of view, I mean, yes, the job losses is a bit of a lagging indicator. So we don't really have the full impact of COVID at the moment. But already we saw that January to June of this year, we'd already shared something like 2,260 jobs. And this period coincides with that period of the lockdown. And we know that there were already some Section 189s in process. And so this quick table just shows how the hardest hit commodities were certainly diamonds, chrome, industrial minerals, PGMs, and coal. But I think a lot of people know that diamonds were already experiencing some really challenges even before COVID. And unfortunately, the job losses are in some lower categories of employees, your category 4 to 8 employees, making up 60% of those that have lost their jobs, while officials more at 23%. I think my colleagues here have spoken about some of the things that mining companies, in particular Anglo, did in coming to the party, so to speak, in helping the country fight COVID. I mean, what the companies did was really truly phenomenal. And I mean, this is just a list of some of the things that they're doing. From shoring up the country's COVID testing capacity. The companies like Anglo American put in PCR testing machines in essentially all the provinces where they're operating, and even those provinces where they weren't. So did other mining companies like Glencore, Northern, Goldfields, provision of PPE and medical equipment through the provincial structures working with government. And as was said, I mean, COVID really showed us the disparities between the haves and the have-nots. So now water, and the absence of having water to be able to clean your hands was really quite dire. So a lot of the companies, providing water facilities for communities, food parcels. Many contributed to the Solidarity Fund. I mean, the impact and the programs that the mining companies put in place to combat COVID were truly quite extensive. And what I've just presented here is just maybe some pictorials of what happened, I think, in the Northern Cape with some of the companies here in terms of what they did. You know, we were really proud. I think, you know, that Premier Dr. Saul was one of those premiers that actually commended the mining industry for its effort. Now, there were certainly those provinces where the mining industry was accused of you know, making COVID worse, fostering COVID by bringing back workers. But I mean, you know, I really do think that the mining industry, we were very careful in taking our employees back to work, because yes, livelihoods are important, but lives are more important. I want to just share with you some quick slides on revitalizing the economy, because as I said, you know, due to the impact that COVID had. And I reiterate, it was really quite vast. I mean, over 3 million jobs have been lost, you know, as a result of COVID. And the sad thing is that by far the majority of those job losses were actually female workers. If I'm not mistaken, I think up to 2 million of them were actually female workers. So it's had a really disproportionate impact on women workers in particular. And we do know that it's certainly had an impact on the economy and will do so, or continue to do so for some time. But I think what we have also realized that, look, this challenge that with COVID has also given us an opportunity to rethink, you know, the future of South Africa, and work together on the economic recovery. And that is essentially what is being done, you know, as you know, on the national stage. We as the Minerals Council are certainly involved in that, but this work has certainly been led by BUSA before SA. And some of these slides that I'm talking to are essentially the ones that they put together. So we are certainly looking at you know, a more inclusive economic future. You know, one of the things that we need to do is we need a compelling and stable environment to attract investment, right? And this will certainly drive growth. So we really have to work hard as a country, you know, to try to restore business and consumer confidence, so we can accelerate growth, so we can protect jobs. And it's not just up to government alone to do this. I think the private sector sees its role in this. And remember, 80% of the jobs are actually supported by the private sector. So yes, government can lead, but you know, we are of the view that government should be doing, what government should be doing is really providing that conducive environment for business to actually operate. And you know, and clearly, you know, government will be at the lead of this. So this is some of the thoughts that are going around at the moment in terms of the work that needs to be done to be revitalizing the South African economy. I'll just want to maybe focus a little bit on this slide, actually, because I think that's more instructive. Look, the big issue now is trying to tackle some of the constraints that we have. And this slide just really talks to some of the big challenges that we have. The constraints of policy certainty, state capability and capacity, inequality, transformation, inefficiency and redundancy of some of the, you know, SOEs, you know, trying to promote innovation, entrepreneurship, and then the other point being corruption and crime. Now, so this is at a national level. This is not yet even at a mining level. Some of the areas that we've got to focus on, you know, and some of the things that we've got to do in terms of unlocking SMEs, accelerating economic transformation, and having greater regulatory policy and certainty. I will come to, please excuse me, to more what needs to be done in a mining context. But again, just to share a few more slides with you. on how COVID has impacted the economy. And you'll see there in the top right of this slide on the top right, how the COVID pandemic essentially impacted, multiple sectors of the economy. Yes, there's mining there with the impact, but I mean, look at how it's impacted other sectors of the economy, such as trade, finance, agriculture. It has really been quite tremendous, and also, unfortunately, the huge potential impact. Sorry, the huge impact on the economy itself. I think it's also recognized that there are quite a lot of things that we need to address that really undermine our competitiveness within a South African context. I mean, I won't go into the productivity, but I mean, I think we all know that a country's potential growth is a combination of productivity growth and the accumulation of both productive investment and human capital. I think this is kind of like the textbook view on how you must grow your economy. But I think South Africa is really not seen to be a sufficiently competitive country. And look at the ratings. I mean, we're ranking essentially 60 out of 141 countries in terms of ability to attract foreign investment. And some of these concerns include security, labor market flexibility, there's hiring of foreign labor. It's a challenge in the South African context, poor transparency, government adaptability to change, low business dynamism. And from a and from an ease of doing business point of view, unfortunately, according to the World Bank, we've also dropped. I mean, we've dropped essentially from 84th position, 84th position, 35 position to 84. I mean, which is really quite a significant drop in terms of the World Bank. So as an economy, in order for us to actually be driving economic growth, we really do have to make some changes, pulling our socks up as a country, okay? So this slide just basically talks to 8 of the, I'm just trying to watch the time here, 8 of the structural constraints in the mining context. So now we're moving back to mining. 1, we don't have a shared vision in the sector of what needs to be done. What's the purpose of mining? How does it contribute to its communities? What must it do? What must government do? What must communities do? We do not have that common vision, and we think that's a big challenge. Look, electricity supply and reliability is a huge matter for the mining sector. I mean, mining is we joined at the hip with Eskom, simple and clear. I mean, when Eskom has challenges and fails, so does mining. Yes, we're a large contributor in terms of coal, but we are a massive user of that electricity in mining. Logistical bottlenecks. If you look at our export in terms of our export capacity on our, whether it be an iron ore line, have we actually grown our capacity for exports in the last few years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? No. We're still transporting a lot of our coal on road, which is expensive. It's damaging the roads. A lot more should be on rail. We need to get the rail back to being efficient. The other challenge again is also then on the regulatory certainty side, and it's more the constantly changing regulatory environment. Now, it's not as if mining companies, in the mining sector, we don't want laws. No, we need laws. It's important. It's the needing the predictability and the stability. That's the crucial word. And then yes, clearly you need laws that are competitive, but it's that predictability and stability that is absolutely key. Cost competitiveness also comes into it. And yes, as a sector, are we modernizing sufficiently? That's a very big question. But mining is a globally competitive business. Geological factors in SA and its complexity in the South African context also plays its role. And yes, the tension between ourselves and our communities and organized labor, like I said, it's one of the big challenges that we have, I think, in mining. And then, crime and illegal mining. I don't think people appreciate the extent of this challenge in the South African context. Yes, you understand what's happening with the Zamazamas. But I think the average person does not really appreciate that. On the West Rand, we are talking weekly, fortnightly, invasion by, armed illegal miners. With the big attacks, you would have a gang of 40 to 50 heavily armed, can't call them illegal miners. These are people that are, invading a particular processing plant, and to extract, to take out whatever it is. Armed robberies, I guess that's what you have to call it. These were happening on a regular basis, certainly last year. And I'm sure it's still continuing this year. I think we haven't kept track that much this year, but it's a big challenge. Sibanye, in the last few years, I think it was 4 or 5 years, have had to expel something like 4,000, illegal miners from their operations. Just to give you an example of how bad it is. So, from us as a mining sector, I just want to talk about our priority areas. And I'm just, okay, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to maybe just skip the slide and go to the meat of it, because I'm just mindful of the time. One of the things I really want to stress is the importance of exploration for the mining sector and for its growth, and for the mining sector's continued relevance for the economy of South Africa. Yes, South Africa's, our industry certainly continues, South Africa's mining industry continues to decline in terms of its relevance in the South African context. But we think that exploration and investment in exploration is one of the big ways we can actually reduce this. Now, unfortunately, in 2019, expenditure on exploration was about 1.8 billion, which is basically less than 1% of the global exploration spend. And I'll come back to this point a little bit. Think about it. South Africa, such a crucial mining destination, where yes, people think it's a mature mining destination, but in terms of explorability, it is still huge. Yeah, we are only attracting 1% of that global exploration spend. Australia, closer to 40%. Canada, closer to 5%. We should be up there with the likes of Australia and Canada, because, as you know, South Africa is much more, more endowed in terms of mineral wealth. So, a crucial component of this, though, is the ministerial government support. And I'm happy to say that at least that, the Minister Mantashe also sees the importance of exploration. We've been working certainly together with the department in terms of exploration strategy. They're also receptive to ideas relating to, well, what do we need to do? We've said, 8-year prospecting rights. A lot of projects take close to 20 years to take it to be able to take a project to the market. Being able to prospect for 8 years, maybe that's not good enough. We've been pushing for flow-through shares, which have worked very well in Canada. We want similar in South Africa. The 12J scheme is not working. That was our initial attempt at an equivalent of flow-through shares, but that hasn't worked. So we are trying to work with government to try to really boost exploration spend in the South African context. So what this slide also tries to show, I think this was a bit of work that was done by PwC, that, you know, in a scenario where maybe we're attracting 1% of exploration spend compared to, say, 5%, what this means for the economy. So instead of getting 1.8 billion, we'd be getting, you know, 8.8 billion in scenario 2. The impact on the GDP of the economy of South Africa, 2 billion as opposed to 10.2 billion. And then potential jobs, 5,500 compared to 27,000, you know, and similarly, you know, tax revenues. It's not going to close the gap, the big gap that we have in terms of South Africa's finances, but certainly it will go somewhere. But what's important here is that it will provide that pipeline of projects to sustain the mining sector. That's the critical component of it. And we are not, as South Africa, getting our share. And even on the continent, I mean, we might add that, you know, the exploration spend, the money is going to countries like DRC. Yes, you know, copper, cobalt, gold, those kind of commodities. But South Africa should actually be getting a lot more of that. And again, this slide just basically shows the impact that exploration can have on, you know, for every 1 billion spent on exploration, mining companies contribute about 1.8 billion to the GDP through direct and indirect and induced impacts, and then also on jobs and to government revenue. I've mentioned this point that exploration is important for the future of the mining sector. This slide just talks very briefly to the importance of mining to the economy. All I'm going to say is just look at the right there to see the contribution that mining has to the economy. You'll remember that yes, we're at 7.whatever%, but I mean we are a large contributor to exports. I think primary exports make up about 21% of the country's exports. So we earn a lot of money for the country. Let me maybe move on very briefly here. Again,
Shabana, I'm going to ask you to summarize so that we should give an opportunity for questions. Thank you, sir. You're doing quite a good work. Just give a summary now.
Thank you, Ndade. So apologies for taking so long. So, I mean, this is really just my closing slide. You know, what if, you know, we could get this shared value, you know, shared vision between government, labor, and communities? What if we could get the industry modernized and really fix up our infrastructure, making it a lot more efficient, cost-effective? Yeah, you know, what if we could get a lot of these things right, getting SA mining a lot more attractive to investors? We really do think that mining would be quite a drive for economic transformation in the country. Thank you very much, and apologies for taking too long.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting. We all were carried away by your, you know, articulative way of presenting it, that we didn't look at our times, but we still have some time. We have almost 25 minutes can wrap up. I'm gonna open up for questions. I'm not gonna even summarize what you've given up because it was loud and clear. I did manage to capture some questions, and I'm gonna be reading 5 questions. I see the 6th one is coming up. We'll capture it over. Let me start by shooting with those ones that I have captured. Basically, the first 2 are from myself, and I've got the 3 from the audience. I'll capture the 4th one that comes. Obviously, we've heard that mining has helped to shape South Africa to a greater extent than any other industry. I think it has led to the establishment of a lot of towns that we can think of, you know, the Kimberley on the diamond side, the Welkom on the Goldfield side, the Carltonville in the West Rand, and the Johannesburg itself. The whole city was actually developed as a result of mining. Now, my question is specifically directed to Mrs. Ciara Machedi Mkhabela. Does the program such as We Care that you have highlighted also include efforts to convert some of the ghost towns that we see, so that they could be, you know, downstream of those that will happen, or alternative industries? I'm looking into like Silicon Valley type like of things, so that even after the lifespan of the mine, the towns can still continue to exist. Also touching on the water reticulation, the recycling, very impressive 70% success rate that you've given. Now, how does this address the problem of acid water drainage that is being highlighted? Is that 70% of the success rate including that? Tate Chabani, there are two ways of looking into mining in South Africa. You either can say that the glass is half empty or half full. The first is, as a sunset industry plagued with a lot of rising costs, technical difficulties, and political hostility. I think you touched on 8 challenges that you put on. Now, the question that I'm asking, should we have to look based on the challenges that you've highlighted, or should we say a mine is well positioned to can really relive itself and face its challenges, taking into account that South Africa is still having a lot of the reserves that the world is looking for? Is the glass half empty, if we are negative, or half full? So I would like your view. There's also a question that is directed to Mamsara Machedi Mkabela, and it is from Mkolisi Mtungwa. Mining being a transformed sector and mainly owned by foreign people, is there a plan to start empowering the previously disadvantaged people, particularly in the procurement spend, with specific reference to the coal for the small-scale mining? There was another one on the farming. How does mining Anglo-American help the Black South African farmers and the emerging farmers? And that was asked by Mr. Matsunyani, Ben Matsunyani. Obviously, on the Zamazama question that you touched on, Mr. Chabana, it is alleged that Zamazama turns over 7 billion per annum. Now, that money the government is not even putting its hands on tax. What is your view on legislation and regulating and setting standards, particularly the safety for the Zamazamas? It's a pity we don't have our Minister Mantashi here from Minerals and Energy, which I hope was going to be helpful on the issue of Zamazama. I think for now you've got a nice 5 questions, 3 on 2. I would suggest that you shoot on them, and then we will capture other questions. If you're ready, Mesara, you can unmute yourself and start to answer the question. Thank you, madam.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mashilo. Can we confirm with Itumeleng that he has received my presentation, which I will be very happy for him to share with all the attendees? I saw that it was requested, and I apologize that it could not show up on the screen at the time I was presenting. So, you know, I'm going to choose to start with the agriculture question, just because I am a closet farmer, or I really love farming. And I believe that of all the SDGs, the SDG on no hunger should be the most prioritized. That was even before we had the pandemic. So this question speaks to something I also believe in. So the one question was whether we have any programs that support farmers in our communities. And the answer is yes. For years, Anglo has had programs in farming in different forms as part of either their SLP commitments or as part of their biodiversity commitments. We have seen different models from cooperatives to Anglo-run farms, with the beneficiaries being communities. And I have been fortunate that I also started and worked with many communities on farms whilst I was at Anglo-American Platinum before I moved over to Anglo-American. And so we have case studies of successful ones. And I can give you an example of such, the one in Taung in the Northwest. It is successful. It is more than 4,000 hectares. They have moved from low cash crops into high yielding cash crops, and even long-term type of crops such as avocado trees and so forth. They do pecan nuts. It's just an amazing case study that Mr. Mashilo would be happy to share just 2 or 3, even 1-page overview, because I think that for anyone keen to go into farming, it makes a very good case study of when it works and when it fails. And just my summary there was, there is water infrastructure in that area that existed even pre-democracy. The farmers in that area are multi-generational African farmers. No different to me. My father was a farmer, commercial farmer. His father was a farmer. And you have this type of people in every community. We know them, are members of our communities who farming is in their blood, and this is what they believe in. All they need is for them to be given an enabling environment in terms of water, in terms of more land, instead of just farming their own land, allowing them to co-op into bigger land, either community land, government land, or even private sector land. So creating scale for them, ensuring that there is water and the infrastructure that is working. And then lastly, ensuring that they have access to the market. So they farm to the market. I'm summarizing here for purposes of time. There are underpinning values that have to exist in that community, which for us, in this town case, if I give this as an example, and I've seen this in some of the other communities where we have done farming, including in Zimbabwe and elsewhere, it's that the community itself there should be some culture of farming that's existing in there, and cohesion between the community members, just every day, every other community member and their government, the local government, as well as the traditional leaders. Where all this is in place, you see success. And Taung is one of them. Taung will not need any corporate. It will, in my mind, that's a case study that will succeed and scale and scale and scale up. I saw our Minister of Agriculture was there recently, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just saw it in the news, and I'm sure she must have been impressed with Taung. There are other examples of success, but there are other examples of epic failure, where communities fought and it didn't work.
I think
that is with agriculture. Yeah, I'll be quick. That is with agriculture. Sorry, Mr. Mashilo?
Yes, I was just saying, give a bit of a summary to enable an airtime for the other speaker.
Okay, I'll be very succinct. So on the issue of agriculture, I believe that the private sector as well as government can actually put this enabling levers I spoke about of access to land, and government has announced they will release pockets of land. And I believe private sector should actually review whether they have non-strategic pieces of land that they can partner with communities and technical farmers to develop and come up with land. And Anglo has done that with some pockets of land in Northwest and in Limpopo, where now they have partnered with communities. On the issue of transformation, Mr. Mxolisi, this conversation in my mind is a conversation that Mr. Mashilo would need us more time, would need us to have more time. But I'm going to attempt to answer it as briefly as I can, Mr. Mxolisi. It's a conversation that must be had. I don't think we can ever say enough is enough. However, in my view, if I have been to a few industries, I've been in pharmaceuticals, I have been in the IT sector and manufacturing. And I was pleasantly surprised when I joined this industry in terms of employment and the management, proper management of mines and process divisions that are managed by people like you, like myself. Very capable, smart, young, and in most cases, younger. If you're younger than me, you're young. Younger men and women. They have impressed me at managerial level, as GMs, as production managers, and so forth. So and I'm speaking here on my experience at Anglo. I can tell you there's still work that needs to be done, and we recognize that, particularly at what I call middle management, because middle management feeds into who are the next CEOs of these companies. And we are doing well with the CEOs. We even have women and Black women. We are doing well with the GMs and heads of department. I think we still have an opportunity to improve. In terms of transformation,
don't overkill it. Don't
I
overkill
won't
it.
overkill it. It needs a separate day. That one I won't overkill it.
And I guess
you asked me particularly on the water and the targets we have set ourselves. Yes, it includes the water, the affluent water drainage, and in some of the partnerships that so we are speaking of a waterless mine. This is our ambition.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You've answered very well. And let's give over to Ntate Chabani. I guess some of the addition you've made is going to make some addition to that. Sabata, over to you.
Thanks. Just very briefly, look, I mean, glass half full, half empty. We accept that, some of the commodities in an SA context have had their heyday. I mean, look at gold. But some are certainly still shining. And if we had more of them, copper, if we still had more of some of the industrial minerals, some of the battery minerals, their heyday is still to come. And, as we evolve, we find different uses for these different commodities. I mean, even platinum. So I do think that we are in a position to resolve some of the challenges that I've mentioned. So I would definitely say my glass is half full. If we do not get them right now, we have tried in the past, but we are in such a dire situation now that we need to get it right. So I'm an optimist. The Zamazamas. We do not know how much money is being siphoned out of the country through illegal activity. You're right, it's billions, but I can assure you any estimate that anybody comes up with will be an understatement. Now, I'd like to draw the distinction between small-scale artisanal mining and illegal mining. Okay, we need to regulate. We need to make it easier for for individuals to get into mining through smaller mining, whether it be alluvial operations, make it easier for them to enter the mining industry. Yeah, our regulations are suited for large-scale mining, mature mining companies. We need to change that and make it more applicable for smaller mining companies. Okay, let's regulate it. Clearly environmental also, but let's regulate it. ASM. I draw the distinction with organized crime. There is a lot of organized crime in South Africa, in the mining sector. When you hear that the equivalent of Colombian cartels are going into mining, it's a lucrative business. That must be dealt with criminal sanction. We need better defined offenses, bigger sanctions, and a better way of dealing with that. Because this illegal mining it's an international syndicates that are operating. So that for me is very different, and that has to be treated with the contempt that it deserves. Small scale artisanal mining, let's legalize it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have some few minutes. I'm going to quickly mention, I picked up about 4. One is from Newton Baloyi. He says he's got 22 years of experience in the mining sector. What he's seeing as a problem is that there are hardly black consultants, and he marketed himself to say he can really assist. Yeah, you can decide whether you respond to that and all that. And then Ramakwala, how can mining company uplift truck owners? There's another question. He was not specific as to who. Anybody of you can respond. And then Melitabo Tema, the overseer from Emalahleni branch, specifically asked Mesara to say, how can mining houses reduce dependency on employment and survival for sustainability on their host communities? And then the last question is directed to Ndate Chabani to say, what is your view, sir, on the current mining charter, particularly the transformation part on it, as articulated by the Minister, Gwede Mantashe?
Madam, I'll let you go first.
Well, thank you so much. What a gentleman you are, Tabello. On the issue of opportunities for people who have businesses, and I'm sorry that after 22 years, the opportunities have not materialized as they should for a business person. I think there are opportunities. I honestly believe that there has been, in a way, a reset button. There are opportunities not in your traditional value chains, but the modernization agenda that is existing currently in the mining sector as a whole, by the way it's coming out and set up, it creates an opportunity. For me, I think that message is important. There is an opportunity in getting involved in the new technologies. There is opportunity in because you're entering with new players. No one can claim in a local setting that they have, they have run transportation trucks using fuel cells. No one can claim that. And so to me, there is an opportunity there in what we call the transition, the just transition into greener energies. And I think these opportunities, people should come, to the front and say, we like to get involved, and this is what we can bring to the table. On the issue of so Tibello, I will leave the coal tracking or the coal question to you for the whole industry. Did I miss another question, Mr. Mashilo? I picked up on that one. Yeah.
Should I maybe just come in with the two, and then I'll give you an opportunity again. Just on the coal trucking side, I think every business has its space. I just do feel though, and I did say this earlier on, that there is a space for trucking of coal. But I think in the South African context, we should actually be moving a lot more of our coal on rail. I think that's as simple as that. I mean, remember, trucking your coal as opposed to moving it on a conveyor belt from the mine to the power station is certainly a lot more costly, time consuming. But, if you're bulk transporting it through whatever the conveyor belt, ESCOM can understand where it's coming from, the particular quality of the coal. If it can come from different trucks from anywhere in the country, then there's a challenge of now, how do you tell the particular quality of a particular truck? So trucking on coal, it has its challenges, and I don't have the solution here, but I just wanted to maybe throw some challenges there. On the mining charter, very quickly, what do we think of the mining charter? We support the mining charter. We support Minister Matashe's mining charter. I was involved in the discussions on the mining charter. We think the charter as an instrument is critical for driving transformation in this country. let's be honest. Yes, if we didn't have these charters here, there wouldn't be this transformation in the country. You know, would mining companies transform to such an extent? No. You know, so these charters are critical and we support them. And yes, having a charter with new, more stretched targets is absolutely critical. Don't confuse what I've said, what I'm saying now with what I said earlier of needing regulatory certainty. You can still have regulatory certainty. You know, make that charter for over a 10-year period or 15-year period instead of changing it every 5 years, because mining companies don't want to invest. I mean, mining is a long-term thing, you know that. You can't invest for 1 year and be out in year 3 or 4. It doesn't happen like that. You're in there for decades, so you still, we need those increasing challenging targets, but we need that regulatory certainty. So in short, we support the mining charter. Yes, we do have 1 or 2 disputes at the moment with the minister on elements of the charter, but 90% of the charter is fully supported. We can always go into the detail. Thanks, Emma. I don't know if you want to come back to those other issues.
No, excellent. Perhaps to Mamsara, there was a question on how to decrease dependency by communities of the host mines. If you would like to comment on that, and then thereafter, the chairperson of the Mpumalanga branch, Mr. Mawele Dlamles, will be ready to make the vote of thanks. There are 3 questions that came up, but I'm a bit worried that we are going to be caught up by time, and I take it that the names are there. We will answer directly to those people. Would you mind to make a parting shot, madam?
Thank you so much. Yes, I had made note of the question by Ms. Tema, which I have to answer, lest I offend my hostess. I still would like to reiterate the point I made earlier about dependency of mining jobs, to say that if you look at the movement, at least I can speak for Anglo and allow Taban to speak for the rest of us as Anglo as part of the Mineral Council. If you look at the shift of our strategy from just being based on a commercial pillar to what I have brought in as the sustainable mining and the pillars within the sustainable mining plan, it on its own, it actually provides an opportunity. And perhaps we need to share more about this as a company so that people should understand. I have, and I know colleagues have, but we probably should be sharing more about what is entailed in detail in that program. Because that program provides opportunity in energy, in water. It provides opportunity in biodiversity, in livelihood restoration, like never before. But we have to, BMF and others, you have to help us change the mindset of people that say, my great-grandfather did mining, my uncles did, everyone did mining. Mining is the only prestigious job to say. Modernization gives us an opportunity to quantum leap into other new areas that are interlinked to mining, but are not necessarily mining. I think there is a big opportunity. On the question around, Ms. Mashilo, allow me, on the question around processing and why that is not done in South Africa, most of Anglo-Americans processing in terms of refineries, all of them, smelting, that's all done in South Africa. Thank you.
So much. Anjali said, let's give them a big round of applause, but thank you. The 2 speakers, I think they were both balanced. They gave us a balanced view. Time is against us. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to put my apologies through. I see there are other 4 questions, but I'm going to give this opportunity to the chairman of the province, Mr. Mawele Dlamles, to actually do what he's supposed to be doing. Over to you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thanks, Chair of the Day. Good evening to everybody. Thanks for coming to this webinar. Thanks to our speakers, the three speakers. It was eloquent. I think today my mining knowledge has increased significantly. So thanks also to the attendees. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. But we'd also like to encourage everybody who's here to join the struggle of BMF for transformation, for equality, and so forth. We will be sending the documents to all members via email. We'd also would like the attendees to allow us to also send BMF material so that we can give them a better perspective of what the organization is mission and its objectives all about. With that, thank you, Chair, for hosting us today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zamleze. Without any doubt, BMF is an organization that is striving for leadership, managerial development, and of course, the socio-economic transformation is the pinnacle that actually drives the BMF. Without much ado, thanks for everybody. Thanks for the participation. And from my side, you made my task very easy, particularly the presenters, by keeping on time. We just 5 minutes over time, which is really not bad. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.